The bitter wind howled through the skeletal trees as Johanna Abbott trudged up the muddy path, her threadbare cloak offering little protection against the late autumn chill. The village of Millbrook lay behind her, its small cluster of thatched roofs disappearing into the mist as she crested the hill. She had lived there all her 47 years, but since the plague had taken her husband and both daughters 3 summers past, it had ceased to feel like home. The villagers who had once been neighbors now averted their eyes when she passed. A woman alone, without family, was an ill omen in these superstitious times. "Widow Abbott," they whispered, "speaks to herself. She does." What they did not understand was that sometimes speaking to the dead was the only comfort left to those who remained. The parchment in her hand crackled as her fingers tightened. The message had arrived yesterday, carried by a stern-faced man who had departed as quickly as he had come. Her mother's cousin, a woman she had never met, had died and left Johanna her cottage and land at the edge of the forest. The inheritance had shocked her. She had not even known this relation existed. As Johanna rounded the final bend in the path, she stopped short. The cottage was little more than a hovel, its thatched roof half collapsed, windows nothing but gaping holes in crumbling walls. The surrounding land was a tangle of weeds and brambles, with what might have once been a garden now overrun with wild growth. A murky pond sat stagnant at the edge of the property, its surface covered with a film of algae and fallen leaves. Johanna's heart sank. This was her great inheritance? This broken-down shell that looked ready to collapse at the first strong wind? A rustling sound from behind the cottage startled her. Her hand went to the small knife at her belt. Wild animals and desperate men were equally dangerous to a woman alone. But instead of threat, a scraggly brown dog emerged, limping slightly on one front paw. It regarded her warily, neither approaching nor retreating. "Well," Johanna said, her voice rough from disuse, "it seems we are both unwanted creatures." The dog cocked its head, as if considering her words. "Do you belong here?" she asked, taking a cautious step forward. The dog whined, but did not run away. With a deep sigh, Johanna pushed open the warped wooden door. The interior was dim and musty, thick with dust and cobwebs. A rough table, 2 three-legged stools, and a pallet in the corner constituted the only furniture. A small hearth, cold and ash-filled, occupied one wall. It was marginally better than sleeping in the church portico, which had been her home these past months, after selling her cottage to pay off her husband's debts. The dog had followed her inside, and now sat watching her with intelligent eyes. "I suppose you need a name," Johanna said. "Bran will do. For your color." The dog's tail thumped once against the dirty floor. As darkness fell, Johanna managed to start a small fire using the few dry sticks she could find. By its meager light, she examined the cottage more carefully. Bundles of dried herbs hung from the ceiling beams, their scent still faintly detectable beneath the mustiness. Wooden shelves lined one wall, holding clay pots of various sizes, most cracked or chipped. A trunk in the corner revealed a collection of threadbare linens and a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with a spidery hand. Johanna ran her fingers over the writing. Her own mother had taught her letters, unusual for a peasant woman, but her mother had served in a noble house before marriage. The journal appeared to be a record of plants and their uses. Remedies for ailments, descriptions of when to harvest, how to prepare tinctures and poultices. Her mysterious benefactor had been a healer, it seemed. Sleep came fitfully that night, with Bran curled at her feet for warmth. In the gray light of dawn, Johanna rose, bones aching from the hard pallet. Outside, the morning revealed her inheritance in all its dismal glory. Yet something about the wild tangle of plants drew her eye. Among the weeds, she recognized shapes and patterns that spoke of deliberate planting long ago. "It was a garden once," she murmured to Bran, who sniffed eagerly at the ground. "A herb garden, and a substantial one." Over the next several days, Johanna began the laborious process of reclaiming the cottage. She patched the roof with reeds from the pond's edge, scrubbed decades of grime from the floor and walls, and sorted through the mysterious contents of her cousin's possessions. The journal became her evening companion, its pages revealing a woman of considerable knowledge. Agnes Abbott had been her name, and from the dates, she had lived alone here for nearly 40 years. The garden, however, became Johanna's true purpose. As she cleared away the overgrowth, she discovered dozens of medicinal herbs, some common, others rare and valuable. There was comfrey for healing wounds, valerian for sleep, feverfew for headaches. St. John's wort, angelica, and mandrake all flourished in their neglected beds. When villagers from the nearby hamlet of Thornfield spotted smoke from her chimney and came to investigate, Johanna offered a salve for a child's rash from the plants she had reclaimed. Word spread, and soon others arrived seeking remedies. Most paid with eggs or a piece of cheese, sometimes a loaf of fresh bread. Welcome additions to Johanna's meager stores. It was on a crisp autumn morning, as frost edged the remaining leaves, that Johanna first noticed Bran's strange behavior. The dog had been a constant companion, following her through the garden, watching intently as she prepared her remedies. But today, he kept running to the edge of the pond, barking, then returning to tug at her skirts. "What is it, Bran?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. The dog whined and returned to the pond's edge, pawing at the ground. Johanna followed reluctantly. The pond was small, perhaps 20 paces across, its waters dark and uninviting. Bran continued to dig at a spot where the bank sloped gently into the water. As Johanna knelt beside him, her fingers touched something hard beneath the mud, a stone, perfectly square and clearly shaped by human hands. Curiosity piqued. She scraped away more mud, revealing a row of similar stones. Not random rocks, but a deliberate construction, steps leading into the pond. Why would anyone build steps into a stagnant pond? Before she could investigate further, voices approached from the path. Johanna quickly covered the stones with mud and leaves, an instinct for caution she could not explain. Rising to her feet, she saw 3 men approaching. 2 she recognized as villagers from Thornfield, but the third was a stranger, richly dressed in a velvet doublet and carrying himself with the unmistakable arrogance of nobility. Mistress Abbott, called one of the villagers, Thomas Fletcher, a burly smith with a perpetually sooty face. "This here's Lord Percival from the manor. He's heard of your remedies and has come himself, he has." Johanna curtsied automatically, though the gesture felt foreign after so long. "My lord, I am honored by your presence," she said, keeping her eyes lowered as was expected. Lord Percival was perhaps 50, with a trimmed beard going to gray and cold eyes that assessed her with open calculation. "I have heard interesting tales of an herb woman who has taken up residence in old Agnes's cottage," he said. "It is curious that I was not informed of her passing, as this land falls under my domain." A chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air ran through Johanna. "I received word from a solicitor in the town," she said. "I understood the cottage and land were my cousin's to bequeath." A common misunderstanding among the lower classes, Lord Percival said dismissively. "All land ultimately belongs to the lord of the manor. Your cousin was permitted to live here by my father's grace, and later mine. Now that she is gone, the property reverts to me." Bran growled low in his throat, and Johanna placed a cautioning hand on his head. "I see," she said carefully. "Then I am at your mercy, my lord." The nobleman surveyed the cottage and gardens. "I have need of skilled herbalists. My wife suffers from melancholy and cannot sleep. I am told you might have remedies for such conditions." "I do, my lord. Valerian root steeped in wine can bring peaceful sleep, and St. John's wort can lift the spirits. Prepare these for me, and we shall discuss your continued tenancy." His eyes drifted to the pond. "Though I may have other uses for this land in time." After Lord Percival departed with his remedies, promised payment, and no firm assurance about her future, Johanna returned to the pond. The steps Bran had uncovered troubled her. They seemed old, far older than Agnes's time here. The dog whined and pawed at the mud again. "You want me to follow these down, do you not?" she asked. Bran barked once, tail wagging. "I suppose there is only one way to discover where they lead." Removing her shoes and hiking her skirts, Johanna descended the stone steps into the cold water. The pond was deeper than it appeared, the water soon reaching her knees, then her waist. The steps continued downward. Taking a deep breath, she ducked beneath the surface. In the murky water, her groping hands found the steps continued to what felt like a small platform. As her lungs began to burn, her fingers encountered what seemed to be a metal ring. She tugged at it, but it held fast. Forced to surface for air, Johanna gasped and pushed her wet hair from her face. "There is something down there, Bran," she said, shivering. "A door, I think, with an iron ring. But it will not open with a simple pull." That evening, as she dried herself by the fire and recorded her discovery in Agnes's journal, now becoming her own, a knock came at the door. Bran growled, but Johanna shushed him. She opened the door to find a small boy, perhaps 10 years old, standing nervously in the gathering dusk. "Are you the herbwoman?" he asked, his thin face pinched with worry. "I am," Johanna replied. "What troubles you, child?" "My mother, mistress. She burns with fever since yesterday. Father sent me to beg for any remedy you might have." "What is your name, boy?" "Lucas Porter, mistress. We live in the mill cottage, down by the stream." Johanna quickly gathered feverfew, willow bark, and other herbs known to reduce fevers. "Brew these as a tea, as hot as she can stand it," she instructed, "and place cool cloths on her forehead. I will come in the morning to see how she fares." The boy clutched the packet of herbs gratefully. "We have no coin, mistress, but father says he can repair your roof proper as payment." "That would be most welcome," Johanna said, smiling at the boy. "Now hurry home to your mother." After Lucas departed, Johanna returned to Agnes's journal, searching for any mention of the pond or what might lie beneath it. Near the back, on pages she had not yet examined closely, she found a passage that made her blood run cold. "Lord Percival's father came again today, demanding I sell him the property. He knows what lies beneath the waters, though he cannot access it without the key. I will take that secret to my grave rather than let that family claim what they once stole." Johanna's fingers trembled as she turned the page. A key? To what? And what connection did the Percival family have to her cousin's land? The journal offered no further explanation, but at the very back, tucked into the binding, she discovered a small piece of parchment with a drawing, a simple sketch of what appeared to be a key and a series of symbols she did not recognize. The following morning, Johanna visited young Lucas's mother, who thankfully showed signs of improvement after a night of herbal teas. On her return, she found a visitor waiting at her cottage, an elderly woman leaning on a gnarled walking stick. "You do not remember me," the old woman said before Johanna could speak. "I am Martha Gillespie. I was friend to your cousin Agnes." Johanna invited her inside, offering a seat and a cup of herbal tea, which the woman accepted gratefully. "I heard you had come to claim Agnes's cottage," Martha said, her rheumy eyes examining Johanna closely. "You have her look about you. The same eyes." "Did you know her well?" Johanna asked. "I never met her myself. For 40 years we were friends, though I could only visit in secret these past 10. Lord Percival forbade anyone from coming here." Martha's voice lowered. "He feared Agnes knew too much about his family's past." "What do you mean?" Martha glanced around nervously, as if expecting to be overheard even inside the cottage. This land was not always a simple herb garden with a pond. Long ago, before the Percivals claimed lordship of these lands, this was a sacred site. The pond. She hesitated. The pond conceals an entrance to an ancient shrine. It is said to hold great treasure, not gold or jewels, but something far more valuable. What treasure could be more valuable than gold? Johanna asked, thinking of the door she had found beneath the water. Knowledge, Martha whispered. Scrolls and books from the old times, before the Normans came. Wisdom that was thought lost. She reached into her sleeve and withdrew a small object wrapped in cloth. Agnes asked me to keep this safe. She said if anyone of her blood ever came to claim the cottage, I was to give it to them. Johanna unwrapped the cloth to reveal a small iron key, green with age and corrosion. Is this the key to the underwater door? Martha confirmed. Agnes never used it herself. She feared what would happen if Lord Percival discovered the contents had been disturbed. But she protected the entrance her entire life, as did her mother before her and her grandmother before that. After Martha left, Johanna stared at the ancient key in her palm. Was this truly the key to some ancient treasury of knowledge? Or was it merely the delusion of an old woman and her deceased cousin? Yet the stone steps and iron door were real enough. She had felt them with her own hands. The remainder of the day passed in a flurry of visitors seeking remedies. Word of Johanna's healing skills had spread through the surrounding villages, and people arrived with ailments ranging from toothaches to chilblains. By the time the last visitor departed, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the garden. Johanna knew she should wait until morning to investigate the pond further, but curiosity burned within her too fiercely. Taking a lantern and the iron key, she approached the water's edge, where Bran was already waiting expectantly. "You knew about this all along, did you not?" she murmured to the dog. "Were you Agnes's guardian as well?" The night air was cold against her skin as she waded into the pond, lantern held high. When the water reached her chest, she took a deep breath and submerged, following the stone steps downward. In the faint glow of the lantern, she could now see the small platform at the bottom and the iron door set into what appeared to be a stone arch. With trembling fingers, she inserted the ancient key into the lock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a grinding sound that sent vibrations through the water, the door swung inward. Lungs burning, Johanna surfaced for air before diving again, this time swimming through the open doorway. To her astonishment, the passage beyond sloped upward, emerging into an air-filled chamber. Gasping, Johanna pulled herself onto a stone floor, lifting the lantern to illuminate her surroundings. The chamber was small but exquisitely constructed, its walls covered in symbols similar to those she had seen in Agnes's journal. Stone shelves lined the walls, and upon them sat dozens of clay containers and wooden boxes. Heart-pounding, Johanna opened the nearest box. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth that had preserved it from the damp, was a scroll of vellum covered in writing she could not read. Each container held similar treasures, scrolls, small-bound books, and parchments filled with diagrams and text. One larger chest, positioned centrally in the chamber, drew her attention. Unlike the others, it was locked. Johanna examined it closely in the lantern light and noticed a small indentation that matched the shape of Agnes's key. When she inserted and turned it, the lid opened with a soft click. Inside lay a book larger than any she had seen before, its cover adorned with gemstones that caught the lantern's glow. Beside it was a smaller volume with a simple leather binding and, remarkably, writing she could understand. It appeared to be a translation guide, with common phrases in the ancient script matched to their meanings in more recent language. Johanna realized with growing excitement that she had discovered not just any collection of knowledge, but a repository of medicinal wisdom from ancient times. The smaller book confirmed it. It was filled with descriptions of plants, preparations, and treatments far beyond anything in Agnes's journal. A sudden noise from above startled her, a splash in the pond. Someone else had entered the water. Quickly, Johanna closed the chest, gathered the translation book, and retreated toward the passage. Peering cautiously through the underwater doorway, She saw a dark figure descending the stone steps. Lord Percival. Johanna pulled back into the chamber, mind racing. Had he followed her? How had he known about the door? The underwater passage was the only way in or out. She was trapped. From her hiding place behind the central chest, Johanna watched as Lord Percival emerged into the chamber, water streaming from his expensive clothing. His face was a mask of triumph as he surveyed the collection of ancient knowledge. At last, he breathed, seeming to forget his sodden state in his excitement. After 3 generations of searching, my grandfather knew it was here somewhere. He moved directly to the central chest, confirming Johanna's fear that he somehow knew exactly what he was looking for. When he found it locked, he cursed loudly, then began examining the other containers, rifling roughly through scrolls and books with no care for their fragility. Johanna remained motionless, barely breathing. If Lord Percival discovered her here, she had no doubt he would ensure her silence permanently. Her hand tightened around the translation book she had taken from the chest. If this was what he sought, she at least had denied him that prize. After what seemed an eternity, Lord Percival gathered several scrolls and prepared to depart. As he moved toward the underwater passage, a sudden commotion erupted from above, barking, followed by a splash and the sound of struggling in the water. "Bran," Johanna whispered, her heart constricting with fear for her loyal companion. Lord Percival cursed again and hastily returned the scrolls to a shelf before diving back through the passage. The moment he was gone, Johanna rushed forward, securing the precious translation book inside her bodice before following him into the water. When she emerged from the pond, gasping for air, a chaotic scene greeted her. Bran was circling Lord Percival, barking furiously while the nobleman swung a walking stick at the dog. Several villagers stood at the edge of the property, drawn by the commotion. "That which set her devil dog on me," Lord Percival shouted, pointing at Johanna as she waded to shore. "I came to check on my tenant, and this is how I am greeted." Johanna saw Thomas Fletcher among the onlookers, along with Lucas Porter and his father. "That is not true," she said firmly, wringing water from her skirts. "His lordship was trespassing, searching for something in my pond." "Outrageous," Lord Percival sputtered. "This woman is clearly deranged. The land is mine, as is everything on it." He turned to the gathered villagers. 5 shillings to the man who drives out this witch and her cur." No one moved. Instead, Thomas Fletcher stepped forward. "Begging your pardon, lord, but we have seen you searching this property before, when old Agnes still lived. And Mistress Abbott here has helped many of our families with her remedies." He glanced at the other villagers, who nodded in agreement. Lord Percival's face darkened with rage. "You dare to question me? I will have the sheriff remove this woman and burn her cottage to the ground." "That might prove difficult, my lord," came a new voice. A man in the robes of a court official emerged from the path, accompanied by 2 armed guards. "I am Magistrate Henry Wells from the King's Court in London. I have been investigating reports of certain historical artifacts being sold abroad, artifacts that rightfully belong to the crown." Lord Percival went pale. "I know nothing of any artifacts," he stammered. "Indeed." The magistrate produced a document bearing an official seal. "This warrant authorizes me to search your manor house. We have reason to believe several ancient manuscripts from monastic collections found their way into your family's possession." As the guards moved to flank Lord Percival, Johanna stepped forward. "Magistrate Wells, there is something beneath my pond that you should see." An ancient chamber containing scrolls and books that Lord Percival was attempting to access. The magistrate's eyes widened. "Show me." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Magistrate Wells brought scholars from London who carefully catalogued and removed the contents of the underwater chamber for safekeeping in the Royal Library. The translation book Johanna had taken was returned to her as a reward for her discovery and assistance, along with a royal grant confirming her ownership of the cottage and surrounding land in perpetuity. Lord Percival faced charges of theft and attempted selling of national treasures. His family, it was revealed, had been systematically looting ancient sites for generations, selling priceless artifacts to wealthy collectors across Europe. As spring arrived, Johanna's garden flourished under her careful tending. With knowledge from the translation book, she cultivated rare herbs and prepared remedies of remarkable efficacy. Word spread throughout the countryside of the miraculous cures available from the herb woman at the edge of the forest. Where once the village had laughed at the widow who spent her days digging in the dirt and talking to plants, now they lined up at dawn for her remedies. Ailments that had plagued families for generations yielded to Johanna's treatments. Even nobility from distant counties made the journey to consult with her. Lucas Porter became her apprentice, showing a natural aptitude for the healing arts. His quick mind absorbed the ancient knowledge as Johanna slowly translated more of the book's contents. His family moved into a small cottage Johanna had built on her land, his father maintaining the buildings and helping with the heavy work of the expanding gardens. On warm evenings, Johanna would often sit by the pond with Bran at her feet, reflecting on how her seemingly worthless inheritance had transformed into something precious beyond measure. Not just the ancient knowledge that had brought her prosperity, but the community that had formed around her, the purpose she had found in healing, and the family she had created with Lucas and his parents. "You knew all along, did you not?" she would whisper to Bran, scratching behind his ears. "Agnes sent you to guide me." And sometimes, when the light was just right, Johanna could almost see the reflection of her cousin in the pond's still waters, nodding in approval at what her inheritance had become, not just a collection of herbs and ancient wisdom, but a legacy of healing and hope that would continue long after she was gone.